Today on Mother Mayhem. What the actual fuck? Why would I do that? The part I hated the most was that my mom would just sit on the couch and watch and judge every moment, the entire time. I just knew that in an hour she'd be on her phone telling someone about how I was an awful mom, unable to cope with parenthood. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Podcast for daughters. I'm your host, Heather Gray, and I am so very glad you're here. Today, I get to introduce you to Kimmy. Now, here's a pretty cool story. A few weeks ago, when I talked to you about caregiving for your narcissistic and aging mom as an adult, I introduced you to DJ. It turns out that DJ and Kimmy are sisters in real life. One sister had written to me, and then the other did, and I didn't know that they were sisters until after. Now, I had contemplated doing a sister episode, but their questions were so wildly different that it felt like I would be having two totally different conversations with all of you. They also have a third sister, and I can't even tell you how emotional it makes me when I tell you that the three of them have begun healing together by listening to the show. I'm just so moved by that and honestly so honored, and I totally ugly cried when I first found out. None of you are going to be surprised by that at this point. But now, Kimmy, I had to name you Kimmy because DJ's episode I'd already covered Michelle and Stephanie, but I just had to stick with that Full House theme, and I hope you don't mind. 2 weeks ago, you heard me all talking to Ray. Ray included a long letter with her story, and you listened to my rationale for including the whole story in that episode. It was a clinical call that I made for the best way to serve that conversation I was having with Ray. This week, I'm making another clinical call, and I am trimming Kimmy's story for her. Now, Kimmy's in the weeds when it comes to narcissistic abuse recovery right now. She's weighed down by the past, by all of the stories, all of the aha moments, and all of the insights that are coming to light in rapid procession as she begins to process all of this. But also, her past is really impacting her emotional well-being right now. She's filled with questions and uncertainty. She's managing body dysregulation and is struggling to slow herself down. So, Kimmy, I have to be honest here because I actually think it would be a disservice to you if I read your letter back to you in its entirety. You ask really pointed questions, and I want to be able to answer all of them. And I think the best way to do this is to be able to get you to focus on your part of your trauma that's just yours. In your letter, you did such a great job of honoring the experiences of everyone in your family. You acknowledge your enabling father, and you show grace for him in recognizing how hard it would have been to get out from under your mother's wrath. You understand that both of your sisters have been significantly impacted by your mom, and you're careful not to put anyone else's pain above your own. And I recognize and honor all of that. But this, my friend, is your episode, and this is our conversation. So we're going to keep this conversation on your turn. I want you to get practice at taking up space, and I want you to trust that no one listening thinks that you're putting your pain above anyone else's. We can hear your pain and know that everyone in your family system is feeling their own pain too. So, for those of you listening, I am jumping into the middle of Kimmy's email, but I'm confident that you already know her pain and her story, and I trust you all to know that the same is true for me, that I'm not diminishing her experience when I edit her letter and story. I just want her focusing on herself for the next little bit. Here's Kimmy, and I'm going to find all of you on the other side. Eventually, I went off to college, and I majored in music business, and I minored in psychology. I landed a terrific internship at a recording studio where I met my dashing husband. How can you say dashing any other way, by the way, Kimmy? He is freakishly talented as a producer, pianist, and music director and has seen much local success as an entertainer for the past 30 years. This never mattered to my mom, of course, as he wasn't Christian enough or trustworthy enough or anything enough. Nevertheless, we were totally in love, and after dating for 4 years, we got married, knowing that we would have trouble conceiving a baby. Perhaps one of the most hurtful memories was when I decided to tell my mom at age 29, after being married for 2 years, that we were going to start trying to have a baby. I wished what every girl would wish, that my mom would get all excited and through tears of joy, she would tell me how wonderful the news is. Instead, I got about 10 seconds of silence, and then, in a solemn and very disapproving tone, sigh, Kimmy, a baby is a lot of work. She once again made me feel like I wasn't mature or responsible enough to handle the pressure of motherhood. I was so let down. Up to that point, I had done everything right. I got a degree. I dated for several years. I waited until I was slightly older and wiser so that I wasn't getting married and having a baby too young. I was living on my own out of state with my husband, and we were providing for ourselves, all the things. Then, once again, I'm treated with total disapproval. Still, I kept trying. I was getting really good at that. We went on to struggle with infertility for 12 long years. Mom always showed other people our pain and drama because she never misses the chance to talk drama, and clearly I was an easy subject. Yet, when it came to true mother daughter support, I didn't get much. She often wanted to be there for tests and procedures, but it seemed more for the gossip ammunition than anything else. And I just felt so alone in the storm. Then it got way worse. In the middle of our struggle, my dad had a massive stroke, and within 5 days, we went from a loving, active father to mourning his unexpected death at his bedside after the hospital told us he was on the mend and ready to go home. I was crushed. I still struggle with the fact that my father died before I could ever conceive a child, and I tear up as I type this. As soon as Dad died, my husband and I moved back to our hometown to be closer to our fertility doctors, but we were completely broke. Mom, ever the savior, immediately stepped up, and we moved in with her to help after Dad's death. She wanted this more than anything because now she was the ultimate victim again as a new widow. Of course, while playing total victim to us at the same time, she flaunted the savior hero card to everyone because clearly I needed her help. Crippling infertility costs were, of course, not mentioned in her gossip calls. Instead, she gaslit everyone and led people to believe whatever drama she wanted to create about our life and reason for living with her. After our fourth round of IVF and borrowing some money from my inheritance, which I hated doing because it's just something else my mom can hang over my head, we finally conceived our son. He's super smart, super challenging, and totally perfect. He is our miracle. It was very hard coming off of years of heavy fertility medication, being a new mom with a baby that never slept and a narcissistic mother literally sitting on the couch watching and criticizing every choice I made with my new baby. My husband was working long hours and my hormones were completely pummeled. I'm ashamed to admit that I had a few moments that were completely out of character for me. I would lose my temper and just throw or break something like, what the actual fuck? Why would I do that? The part I hated the most was that my mom would just sit on the couch and watch and judge every moment, the entire time. I just knew that in an hour she'd be on her phone telling someone about how I was an awful mom, unable to cope with parenthood. She would occasionally offer me a break and take the baby upstairs, but it didn't seem to help. I was breastfeeding and the tatas were needed constantly. Oh, Kimmy, I like you. Besides, I struggled with severe insomnia half my life anyways, so what good would rest do? Everything she did to help usually came at a cost, so there was very little comfort in it. My husband and I had several talks after the first year of parenthood in a toxic situation, and we quickly had two new missions. Number one, get the hell out of debt after taking on so much to conceive our child. And two, move the heck away from my mother. We slowly started both of these steps just a few years ago. So far, through COVID and job changes, we have managed to pay off $57,000 in debt with only one more year to go. You guys are superheroes. Even through that massive accomplishment, I still found myself completely crippled with depression, self doubt, and hopelessness while living with my mom, just like my dad had been. Every year, it just got worse when we started to notice mom doing and saying all the same things to my son that she had done to me when I was little. We started to fast track the moving out. For example, once she went so far as to cry all afternoon and give my son the silent treatment for 2 days for not liking a broken car toy she had bought him. She proceeded to tell everyone how ungrateful he is and how he needs to learn how to be a better kid. But he was only 3 years old at the time. Another example, around the same year, I was watching a true crime show, one of my guilty pleasures. Not just you, Kimmy, not just you. And it was a story about a young preteen boy who murdered some other kids. Mom and I were feeling the tragedy of the story as the episode came to an end. I expected a good mother to say something like, "Gosh, I hope that never happens to Kevin." But instead, she, no joke, says, "Gosh, I hope Kevin doesn't turn out to be a serial killer like that kid." Am I wrong for finding it completely sick that that was her thinking in regards to her own grandson? I'm embarrassed to admit that I'm constantly struggling with conflicting feelings of let my kid be a kid and forgive him for typical naughty mishaps, but then also please be a perfect child like I was so that my grandma will not talk bad about us. I spent a year saving money, and just this past January 2024, we finally moved into a new condo that we love. My sisters have said that within a week, they could immediately see a difference in my posture, my eyes, my speech, everything. Like a massive load was lifted from my shoulders. I lived with her oppressive personality disorder for the past 9 years. 46 years if you include my entire life. I became keenly aware that I desperately needed counseling, but I've been trapped and monitored by her the entire time and could not get out to seek help without her finding out. The last thing I need is for her to tell the entire world that I am a minus and depressed like my dad. Now that I've moved my family out of her house, she has suddenly decided that after 37 years, she needs to move out as well. Fine, whatever. She's now 76 and she could downsize, but my sisters and I are already dreading the drama. She's already tried to gaslight and manipulate conversations to get her way. She's already trying to align the planets so that we all join together around and help her. She even sent us some text saying, "You have no idea how many ugly cries I've had just looking at everything," and that it would bring shame on her if she had to ask others besides her daughters for help. She even tried guilt by comparing us to our aunt and uncle who moved out of their house and all of their kids and grandkids helped them. Of course, our aunt was dying of COVID at the time and they were about to lose their house, so their situation was an emergency and totally different. I suppose I should just land my plane. Sorry, it's just that there's so much to vent about. I could go on and on with stories and examples for hours. I guess I have the following questions. How can I stop being so bitter, where every word she says or everything she does is a button for me when no contact is not an option? How can I navigate a healthy grandson-grandma relationship with our child and be a good mom that doesn't make the same mistakes with my son as my mom did with me? I just want to be a good mom to my son. How do I trust people and understand what is normal in families? Everything I've known my whole life with behaviors and communication just seems like a lie. Where do I even begin with boundaries when even the slightest hesitation to not jumping to her beck and call brings all of us utter misery. Am I still too raw from just moving out to even grasp the concept of boundaries yet? And also, how do we navigate mom as she seems to get worse with age and try to manage all of the end of life stuff, such as an estate handling, finances, senior living, and stubbornness? Stubbornness, to say the least, right? I honestly don't even know if I'm asking the right questions. Perhaps I should ask what the right questions are. How can I make sense of my life and start down a road of normalcy and healing, knowing that most of the outside friends think mom is an angel? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. If it's too much to tackle in one email, I get it. Okay, Kimmy. You and me, kid. You and me. Gosh, you all have been through so much. You and your sisters, and you and your husband and your son. Whew, okay, you are all working through a whole heck of a lot. Your mom, for sure, has taken advantage of one of life's most personal hardships and has used it to her advantage to hold you hostage and to control the narrative of your life and your story. There is a pile of loss there. There's more injustice, there's fear, there's guilt too. And because, of course, you were blessed with your son, and you know all too well that for some couples, infertility treatment doesn't always work, you don't feel like you can grieve your experience or have a feeling that isn't absolutely filled with star spangled gratitude, or worse, that you have your abusive, narcissistic mother to thank for all of it, while she profits from your pain with attention and admiration. What a clusterfuck. And of course, your feelings are going to be a lot for you. First, your mom never let you have any of your own feelings, and now your fertility situation leaves you feeling like you don't get to grieve for how hard it was to have a kid because now you actually have your son. There is a lot of unprocessed trauma inside of you, Kimmy. There is so much pain and there's so much hurt. This can make for really complicated grief and chronic PTSD, but those are psychobabble terms. What we're really talking about is that everything feels really messy and really hard, and it's confusing because it feels like you should just be able to be happy in your new condo, have your son, and you're months away from paying off extraordinary debt. I'd like to help you by tackling your questions one at a time. So here goes. First, you asked me, how can I stop being so bitter where every word she says or everything she does is a button for me when no contact is not an option? Okay, first thing, Kimmy, and this one is hard for me to start with right out of the gate, but I have to say it. Going no contact is an option. It is always an option. You have either decided it's not an option for you because of your values and you feel like you owe her for your son, or you feel trapped and held hostage by how things might get worse if you went no contact, and you've decided that contact with her is the lesser of two evils. Narcissists do a tremendous job of convincing you all that you were trapped, but you also do a pretty good job of all of that on your own too. Remember what I told DJ and the others in the caregiving episode. Some of you daughters will have a value to stay connected to and in care of your mothers despite how she's treated you. That's a values-based decision that all of you have and you get to make, and there's no judgment there. Some people are financially manipulated to stay in relationship with the person for fear of retribution. But your mom's power there, without a written document, is limited. One of the ways you stop being bitter is to own your choice. I could leave the relationship with my mom, but the cost of it is too physically, emotionally, or fiscally too high. It's more than I'm willing to pay, so I am choosing to stay connected to her. That's step one. Then you have to start to tackle the conversation that I had with all of you last week when I talked to you about acceptance. You need to work on accepting that all of this has actually happened to you, that all of this is true about you, your story, and how you got here. There is going to be a lot of catching and releasing those feelings. You've done a lot of the processing already. So some of it is just going to be catching and releasing and understanding that you did the very best you could with the tools you had at the time. This is about honoring and respecting where you've been and all you've gone through. It's about owning and really owning that you have done the very best you could with the tools you had at the time and with all of the trauma and all of the fear and all of the pain and all of the grief that you were already holding. Once that dust settles, you are going to start to get to know who you are now. Who are you now that all of this has happened to you and everything you've gone through? Because we know it's going to change you. We know it's changed you already. And you're going to have some work to do on reintroducing yourself to yourself and coming to know who you are now, how you move through the world, and what you want your life to look like going forward. You will learn that your wants, your needs, and your values have all shifted a bit. Your perspective and the lens through which you look at the world will have changed, and you will have to get to know what those changes mean for you and the life you want for yourself and your family going forward. Now, my guess here, Kimmy, is that you still have a lot of trauma brain running your show, that you feel dysregulated more often than not in your body. And even though you and your husband have a son, you just still don't quite feel safe yet. And that lack of feeling of safety is impacting your perception and your decision-making process. So remember what I have said in previous episodes. Nothing can happen and no decisions can really and truly be made until you feel safe enough in your body to make them. That is the only way that wise mind has a chance of entering and having a say. And as much as possible, major decisions really should not be made while you are dysregulated. I know, of course, that that's sometimes impossible, but I would really work on calming down your nervous system before you make any shifts or any changes. You often will hear therapists like me and other self-help gurus out there talking about prioritizing yourself. And this right here is what I talk about when I'm talking about this. This is about putting on the oxygen mask on yourself first, on calming your body, and then looking at your next steps. Once you can take care of your body and put yourself first in that way, it's easier to let go of the bitterness and the anger. But this is also where I have to remind you a little bit that your bitterness, your anger, and your resentment, they're serving a purpose, Kimmy. They have your back. They are the part of you that recognizes what you never had and what you always deserved. They're your wise mind. So we want to welcome them and let them know that we are glad they're here, while we caution ourselves to not make a decision or change on how we move through the world based on those emotions. We do want to allow anger a seat at the table, but we don't want it controlling the narrative or the course of action any more than we would want your anxiety to. Okay, up next, how can I navigate a healthy grandson-grandma relationship with our child and be a good mom that doesn't make the same mistakes as my mom did with me? Whew, okay, Kimmy. Every single one of your questions is a little bit of a sucker punch. It's a lot. You're really asking yourself some really hard things. And this feels a little bit like a trick question, right? You're basically asking me how your son can have a healthy relationship with your abuser. We already know she can't. She's showing you that she can't. She's showing you that she can watch some errant TV show and then make a sly comment that he could become a pedophile. She's showing us who she is and giving him the silent treatment at age 3 because he didn't like a toy. We believe her. We believe who she's showing us that she is. We don't pretend she's going to be different or better with your son than she was with you or your sisters. We don't pretend that you're going to be able to lay down any kind of boundary and that she's just going to lay down and accept it easily. Instead, we're going to use what we know about her already to inform what you were going to allow or what you were not going to allow going forward. You are going to make yourself a promise right here, right now, to always tell your son the truth in an age appropriate way. If you're worried that your mom might XYZ or ABC with your son, you are going to set up whatever parameters or limits that you need to in order to protect your son. The way you are going to be a better mother for him is by protecting him in a way that you and your sisters never were. Right now, you feel like you are your mother's hostage because she gave you the money that you needed to be able to conceive him. It's my gut instinct here right now that you are going to have to let some of that sense of responsibility go. Right now, you are letting her financial assistance weigh heavier than her abuse. And as you and your sisters know all too very well, doing that gives her a lot of power. It gives her too much power. I encourage you to spend some time reconciling yourself with the fact that you very well, in all likelihood, are going to have to set limits on someone who made having your son possible. I promise you, I get why that's hard. Now, here are some scripts to consider thinking about. I'm not saying here that these are the limits I'm recommending or that I'm pushing. And again, remember here, all of you, I believe really strongly in letting all of you decide for yourselves what you might say or what your own limits might be. But if you're looking for some words, you can try these. Yes, Mom, I know you took from my inheritance to help me have my son. And at the time, I always thought our relationship would look like ABC. But you criticize my parenting and you joke about my son becoming a criminal. I didn't anticipate that when I accepted your gift. But now that that's our reality, I have decided XYZ. Or you might say, I imagine that gifting us our inheritance before you passed entitles you to certain things. And at first, I thought so too. But now I have to look after my son and consider what's best for him. And so I have decided ABC. In episode 49, when I talked to your sister, I spoke to another daughter who was also being manipulated through her inheritance. Everything I said to her is true for you. You cannot be held hostage to it. If you let yourself be, she has you, Kimmy. She's got you. So you have to get out from under that with limits, boundaries, and clear, firm decisions. I want those limits, boundaries, and decisions to come from your values, what you think feels right, not what she thinks or you think she's owed, not what she tells you she deserves, and not from a place of fear of what she will do about the money she gave you if you move left or right of whatever she considers center to actually be. I've talked to a lot of daughters over the years who fear becoming their mothers as parents. Here's what I can tell all of you. The daughters who end up in my office have the mothers who never ask themselves those questions. Just by asking yourself this question, you are increasing the odds that your son won't have the childhood you had. He very well might end up in therapy, but odds are it won't be for this. And I hope you can hear my teasing when I say that because, Kimmy, you are already aware of him. You're already protecting him. You are already giving him more love than you received, and you are already showing that you are A, willing to advocate for him, and B, willing to ask for help when you are not sure about what you should be doing. Keep doing those things. Keep loving him, keep teaching him, keep holding him accountable to being a good person. Keep listening to him, asking him questions, listening to his answers, and being curious about him. Keep having his back. Then, my friend, get yourself healthy. Take care of your mental health. Take care of your physical health. Get the oxygen mask on yourself. The best way to take care of him is to get your mind right, your heart right, and to get yourself right in your own body. Next up, we're tackling some more, so hold on, everyone. We're in this for a little while longer. I just want to be a good mom to my son. How do I trust people and understand what's normal in families? Um, Kimmy, there's no normal in families. Every family has their pile of poop to deal with. So instead of asking yourself, is this normal or does this feel normal? I would change the question. Does this feel good? Does this feel true? Do we speak the truth in our family? Does this family feel safe? What are all of our needs and do we meet those needs? When we don't know what we're doing, do we have safe people we can ask for help from? Who do we trust? Who has our back? And trust, my friend, it is a tricky, tricky thing. I think people who struggle with trust think that because they have quote unquote trust issues, that they're just supposed to start blindly trusting. But that isn't how trust works. Trust is earned, and people earn your trust by being consistent in their word and in their action. Do they say what they mean? Do they mean what they say? Does their behavior line up with their words? When they move left or right of center, do they acknowledge it? Do they listen to you? Do they hold space for you? Does your body feel safe when you are with them? Are you ignoring red flags? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells or you find yourself not saying things just to keep the peace? Pay attention to what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and pay attention to consistency. Anyone can have a bad day, but someone who chronically makes you feel uncomfortable in your body, someone who makes you second guess yourself in your own mind, that isn't normal. And you have to learn to trust yourself by listening to that. Your next couple of questions were about boundaries and where to begin. You'd wondered if maybe it was too early and if you were too raw to set them. And you acknowledged the crazy havoc your mom would cause at the first hint of any limit being set. Here's the thing. Boundaries are designed to teach people how to have a relationship with us and how to be in relationship with us. When people don't know where to begin, it's usually because they've been so chronically walked over that they're beaten down, and by allowing so much shit, the other person thinks that they can just do X, Y, or Z. So, where do you start? Anywhere. There is no universal start place. You just start. Someone says something or does something, and you just decide that's the moment and you inform them of such. I know you're used to A, B, C, but I have decided D, E, F. Mom, I know you're used to me saying yes whenever you need anything, but I can't come to your home to help you pack. I've decided that I am D, E, F. If she acts out, if she's disrespectful, if she's inappropriate, you say so and you name it. I understand that you're mad and angry and that you think it's my job, but I disagree and I won't be helping you. I'm getting off the phone now or I'm ending this conversation. Don't engage in a battle with her about her disagreeing. Accept it that she disagrees. Of course she's going to disagree. Acknowledge it and then just move on. If she continues, disengage and end the interaction. Now, Kimmy, I want to focus your attention on where you ended your letter. How can I make sense of my life and start down a road to normalcy and healing, knowing that most of the outside friends think my mom is an angel? Right off the bat here, my friend, I want to assure you that you've actually already started. All of this is healing, coming to the realizations that you've been coming to, speaking your truth, acknowledging your truth with your sisters, acknowledging your boundaries, acknowledging your need for boundaries. All of this is healing. The best piece of advice I can give you here is don't go digging around. Don't go excavating into your life and your memories for all of the proof that your mom is already who you know her to be. Believe yourself right now. Right now. Believe you already have all the proof you need. You don't need more proof, and there's no such thing as something becoming more true. It's true. We believe you, so you have to believe you. Now, do an inventory of all the ways that this has affected you. What needs your attention? What ways do you move through the world that are no longer working for you? Instead of digging around for more proof or more examples, just focus on what is rising to the top. Start with how it feels in your body, where you might be dysregulated, and tend to those parts of yourself. Look at where it hurts and then tend to that hurt. Grab the hand of your little girl's self. Let her know that you believe her and remind her that you are there to take care of her. Find out what she needs and allow her to have those things. Make sure that she feels safe, and if she doesn't, work on what she might need to feel safe. Pay attention, Kimmy, to what it is you feel. Name your feelings, validate them. Not every feeling is going to need to be processed, but they do need to be seen and validated before they can be released. Feelings that chronically rise to the top, no matter what you do and no matter how many times you release them, are going to be the ones that you have to pay attention to. So let them rise to the surface. Hold them super gently. Offer them a safe place to land. Be curious about them. See what they have to tell you. See what lessons they have to offer. And not to toot my own horn here, Kimmy, and all of you other women who feel like you're in a similar place, but if you return to my first 8 or so episodes of this show and you take the time to listen to them in order, that really is the core work of narcissistic abuse recovery. I would do those episodes in order. You'll see in the show notes for some of them that I made companion guides for those earlier episodes complete with journal prompts. Do yourselves a favor and check those out too. I structured that initial work in that way specifically to curb the flooding and overwhelm that can happen when you're all first starting out. I know you, Kimmy, and your sisters have been listening to the show together, and you may have already gone through those initial episodes together. But if you haven't, I think you would get some value at doing them. The core work of narcissistic abuse recovery is to build a better relationship with yourself, to get to know yourself, your values, your wants, your needs, and your boundaries, and then allow yourself to have them. You're going to have some work to do on what you react to and what you respond to. And you may have to get trauma brain out of fight, flight, or freeze in order to be able to do that. Then, Kimmy, my friend here, you have so much grief separate of your mom to do. Infertility, all on its own, causes so much grief, pain, and trauma. And you very well likely have unprocessed postpartum depression to deal with. So you have to get it all out on the table. That will help you realize what's working for you, what isn't, what you want more of, and what you want less of. You gotta get to know yourself, believe yourself, meet yourself where you are at, and show yourself so much grace. You are in a community of women around the world who are in this with you. And I, for sure, most definitely am in it with you too. Bye for now. I do hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you have a question you'd like me to consider for the show, please do email me over at heather@daughtersnpd.com. You are always welcome to share your story or questions by recording yourself using the voice app on your phone. For best recording quality, please do record directly into your phone without using headphones or Bluetooth speakers. We're building an incredible community as well over on Instagram, and I'd love to see you over there too. You can find us at Daughters NPD. Lastly, if you love what you've been hearing here on Mayhem and have found the show helpful in your own trauma recovery, please do consider becoming a Mother Mayhem sponsor by purchasing simple scripts for saying hard things. It's a resource I created that provides the right words for the hard conversations, and it covers life, love, and work. You'll find a link for that in the show notes. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, please do share the show with her. Your reviews and social shares help spread the word, and I hope you'll consider doing so. Special thanks to Heather Clark for editing the show. She's in my head and knows what I meant to say when the words come out backwards. Thanks so much for your time today. As always, I'm in it with you. Bye for now.